How is everybody going? I am TST's the Mudman, and it's that time of the week again. The weekend ranked is just around the corner, and it's time to figure out what we are going to play this weekend. So there have been no balance patches between this weekend and last weekend, so the meta is pretty much the same. Got around 40% Flourish Nature, 20% Slayer War. So for this week, you're going to want to either play Flourish Nature or Slayer War, or something that beats those two decks. So let's jump into a quick Flourish Nature deck for an example. Alright, so here is the Flourish Nature deck that I've been running. Same exact one as last week. Very simple stuff. You've definitely run into it a bunch of times. You've been playing Gods Unchained recently. Early curve utilizes the new Flourish God power. It's super strong. Tons of overstated creatures like Marshwalker, Black Jaguar, Pyramid Warden, and then things like Shield Bearer, Chirons, and your Vibrant Fruits you get from the Finian Fruit Bearer to buff them up. You can use your Flourish God Power to take lots of value trades, make it so your Shield Bearers trade up. It's just a really great deck in general. Just like I said last week, this deck has the Amazon package. Nature's really great right now. You can replace these Amazons and put wild creatures in, just general good creatures in. Whatever cards you have, whatever cards you like will fit into this deck, as long as you have the key cards, like the Marshwalkers, the Shield Bearers, the Finian Fruit Bearers, the Mooncray Cyclops, those key, super strong, heavy hitters, you're good to go. Nature is a super strong deck, definitely a great choice for this weekend ranked event. Alright, now let's talk about Slayer War. This deck was made by Mirage88. It's the same Slayer War deck we talked about last week. Slayer War makes up about 20% of the meta, so definitely going to run into it over the weekend. And you might want to play it because it's a really great deck. It's an early game deck that can actually stand up to Flourish Nature, keep up with it. And the main reason for that is there are a lot of big tempo swing creatures in this deck. Mainly because of the many Blitz creatures. You've got the Nakvi Warrior with Blitz, the Vanguard Axwoman has Blitz, Tavern Brawler has Blitz, Archangel Bruiser has Blitz, Viking Longship has Blitz, and then you have cards like Valka's Captain as well as Leviathan Hunter, which make relics, and relics allow you to trade with your face, so your creatures get to live. Vicious Rend also makes trades. Let's see, Battle Artisan gets Favor, which is really great for accessing the Sanctum first, and also sort of gets relics sometimes, so another way for you to trade without using your creatures. And another big part of this deck's high win rate is Out of Its Misery. Getting an Out of Its Misery creature in the early game, usually a Blitz creature is really great, but also a 5/9 Pyramid Warden is fantastic. Oftentimes, getting a turn 2 or turn 3 Out of Its Misery creature puts you far enough ahead of your opponent that it's insurmountable, they can't stop you. And one of the reasons why this deck is so strong is if you do run out of resources, if you do run out of steam, you have all of your relics in your Slice of the Harvest, your Valka's Captain relics, as well as Slayer God Power, to just sort of do those last couple chunks of damage. Just a super solid deck in all. Slayer War has been good for a long time. A lot of great creatures in here, a lot of great relics. Strategy's simple and incredibly effective. Slayer War is definitely a deck you can consider playing this weekend for the ranked event. So now that we've talked about Flourish Nature and Slayer War, the two best and most popular decks in the meta right now, let's talk about the decks that beat those decks, because those are definitely ones you'll want to think about for this weekend ranked event. And the most obvious one that comes to mind is Sleep Deception. Sleep Deception has been really popular and really good for the last couple of weeks, but we'll talk about that in a minute, because what I really want to talk about is this control-y mid-range nature deck that CautionFun made. This deck is spicy. If you've got the cards to run this deck, I definitely recommend it. This is what I'm going to be playing this weekend. This deck seems really great for this current meta. And let's jump into it and talk about exactly why. So like I've said a million times in this video and a million times in the last video, Nature's the best god right now. And this does all those strong things that those aggressive Flourish Nature decks do. It's got strong creatures and removal. We've got the Shield Bearers to buff your Pyramid Wardens, as well as your Finian Fruit Bearers. Got your Axwomans for trading. The Netherborn Binder is a great 1-mana 3/2 for early trades. Great to be buffed with Shield Bearers. It's got 2 Lightning Strikes. Lightning Strikes you often see as a 1-of in Flourish Nature decks. This one's a bit more control-y, so we've got 2. 2 Canopy Barrages, obviously, 2 Fey Flame Blades. They're great for controlling the early board as well as activating that coveted Finian Fruitbearer Frenzy. But then as we go up the curve, that's where this deck really gets interesting. Well, of course, we also have the Mooncray Cyclops. Hits like a truck in any deck, super strong. If you're playing Nature, you gotta play the Mooncray Cyclops. We go up to this all the way up to the 7 mana slot. Let's talk about the 6 mana cards next. We've got 1 Black Rhino, just a big, beefy frontline creature. If you're playing against Flourish Nature and they have a whole board full of Blade Flies, this will stop all of them in their tracks. This will get in the way of any big creature Slayer has. It's also substantially larger than any of their individual Blitz creatures, so it's really hard for any Nature deck or any Slayer deck to deal with. Just a solid card. Frontline makes it easier for you to get to your late game, which this deck definitely likes doing. We've got 2 copies of the Hunt. They're pretty simple, little board clear action. Gets rid of Flourish Nature's board, gets rid of Slayer's board. This deck wants to go on to the late game, so the Hunt is a great choice. Now we've got 2 Demonologists in here. This is a great card for Nature. Nature is notorious for having no card draw. So now you've got 2 very decent creatures, 4 mana, 3/3, not the worst in the world. And it's important to note that it's really a 4/3 when it trades because of the Flourish God power. But this draws your most important card in your deck in your 2 Demogorgons. As we'll discuss with the Deception deck, in this current meta with how fast the decks are, if you can stick a Demogorgon, it's usually enough to win the game. And this deck's got 2 Demogorgons, it's got the Hunt, it's got the big front line, it's got the removal cards, it definitely gets to 7 mana. The Demonologists filter through the deck and help get to your demos consistently. So it's just really strong. You have the Ironclad Minotaurs in here to fight against the Sleep Deceptions and the Sleep Deaths, which you're probably going to be running into at least a bit over the weekend, and this will be really strong against them. Waking up your giant Mooncray Cyclops to kill your board wipe death opponent, definitely a good feeling. And then last but not least, for interesting card to talk about, we've got Jason Medea's Muse, sort of your late game in a can. Just like with those Control Deception decks, if you do end up playing against another control deck, which is fairly rare in this meta, you got Jason for one last big chunk of value. You get a whole bunch of expensive legendaries to beat your opponent with. This deck seems really strong in the meta. It seems like Slayer War has no business beating it. It seems like your normal aggressive Flourish Nature deck has no business beating it. It seems like you'll still be able to stomp your opponents. You know, like you still have all the big strong creatures to kill your board wipe death opponents quickly or your sleep deception opponents quickly. And if it does go to the late game, you've got late game stuff with the Ironclad Minotaur, the Jasons, the Demos, the big Black Rhino. You can pick the bonus attack and twin strike option if you want to deal a little bit more damage. This deck just seems really, really great. If you've got these cards, I would definitely recommend playing this for the weekend ranked. This deck is hot. Alright, so now let's move on to Sleep Deception. This archetype definitely has game against Slayer War as well as Flourish Nature. And we're going to be seeing a lot of those decks over this weekend. This is the same deck I showed off last week. And I just really like this list as far as a Control Deception deck is concerned. It does one thing, and it does it really well. This deck kills creatures, and it stalls. And let's just go over the whole deck really quick. Orfeo destroys a creature. Spellbound stalls. This stalls and destroys a creature. This destroys a creature, stalls and destroys a creature, destroys a creature, destroys creatures, stalls, 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 destroys all the creatures, destroys all the creatures. Pyramid Warden has frontline and therefore stalls. Same deal with Bronzegate. We'll skip Jason for now. Ashen Drake is another board clear. And Demo destroys a creature, heals, and stalls. And then we've got Jason, the one odd man out. Just like with that Nature deck we just talked about, Jason is late game in a can. Like I said before, in this current meta, decks are really aggressive. If you can make it to 7 mana and stick a Demo, that's usually all you need as far as a win con is concerned. And in those very rare instances where you are in a control versus control matchup, the Jason can get you a lot of value. It's important to note you can combo Jason with Toasted Piece for 9 mana to get more Jasons for more value. But 9 times out of 10, you're going to be playing against either Slayer or Flourish. And all you'll need to win the game is just plopping down that one Demo. And this deck is just really efficient. Like I said, it stalls and destroys creatures incredibly well, and it does it all the way up the curve. Like you can see, there's one 4-mana card, but every other mana slot, there's an abundance of cards to choose from, and they all slow the game down or destroy creatures. It's just a really solid deck, incredibly strong. It's got the Flip God power, which you can use to get the answers you need on time, so you can always have that Rapture Dance at 6 mana. Just a really solid deck. Super good against Flourish and Slayer, and you're going to be seeing a ton of Flourish and Slayer this weekend. Alright, and the last deck I want to talk about is Tempo Magic. This is the same list from last week, originally made by CautionFun. This deck is super fun, early curve deck, just like the Slayers and the Flourish Nature decks. Definitely strong against both those. The spells are really good for removing their creatures. You can create really threatening boards with your Oni, get lots of value with your Miraculous Familiars. This deck, like I said, can definitely beat Slayer and Flourish. It's definitely a little harder to pilot than those other two decks. So if you've never played this deck, it might not be a great move to deviate, for the weekend ranked tournament. But if you've gotten some games under your belt, definitely a fun deck, definitely good. Little harder to play than the other two, but definitely a good time. A lot of people have put up great numbers with the Tempo Magic. But when you're in those Flourish matchups, remember Street Conjure, really, really great. Makes it so your Star Shard bolts can destroy their buffed up Marshwalkers. The Street Conjure plus Star Shard bolt also gets rid of a 5-attack Mooncray Cyclops, which is really important. Also, don't be afraid to trade with your Worm Breaths in those Slayer and Flourish matchups. You don't really need to worry about your spells going phase. It's all about board control. So in those matchups, this is just a removal spell. Keep that in mind. But yeah, this might not be as consistent, might not be as easy to play as the Slayers and Flourishes of the world, but definitely a strong deck. Definitely in contention for deck you can play this weekend. So we've talked about the meta, we've gone over all the decks. What is the conclusion? What should we play this weekend? Well, the two most popular decks, Flourish Nature and Slayer War, those are obvious choices in my opinion. Flourish Nature is the top dog. You can go with that. You can go with the Slayer War. But me personally, I'll be playing this CautionFun Control-y Flourish Nature deck. This deck looks really good. If you've got the cards, I highly recommend this one. I'm going to be having a blast with it this week. Hey, you! Did you know that subscribing to the TST YouTube channel will increase your win rate by 6.9%? So what are you waiting for? Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell for notifications. And while you're at it, equip Scythe of the Harvest and attack the like button directly in the face. Bye-bye!